Fee, I'm really sorry, you were just having a whale of a time with two ladies. One that had, she was big, and the other one was slim.
You've got to love large breasts, don't you? I do. It's England.
They were giving you a hard time.
No, not really. Well, they're going to be giving me a much harder time during the show.
Right.
There are dominatrixes. Or is it dominatri?
Or dominatrices.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, which we got here in England to do for you. We got it for you for the DVD, you know, because the rest of the guys are all married and their wives won't let them have dominatrices, dominatrices in their, you know, in the show.
Welcome to Shepherd's Bush Empire. You played this place several times before. Great shows you put on. Tell us about the Wild West show. How did that come together?
Well, you know, we're from the Wild West. We really are. We all grew up in Arizona. And
Phoenix,
Phoenix. I actually grew up in Scottsdale, but it was back then it was such a small town that, you know, it might as well have been Phoenix. There was nothing there to do. You had to go to Phoenix to do anything. And going to the rock clubs in Phoenix is where I met all the guys when we were, you know, high schoolers. So back in the 60s. And
what kind of music were they playing for you?
Psychedelic, kind of, you know, Roger loves Jimi Hendrix. Roger used to have a trio called the Red, White, and Blues Band.
Right.
And he did whacked out Jimi Hendrix and all these original kind of psychedelic type songs.
Right.
And
another band was the Beans, yeah?
And the other band was the Beans, which was a Bill's band. And they were individual, two separate bands, just working a bunch. And back then there wasn't, I mean, when we first knew each other, there was, you know, Roger's band was called something else, Bill's band was something else. I mean, there's 4 names since then.
When you met Bill Sputnik Spooner, what was your first impression of this guy?
He was, you know, he was a nice guy. I mean, he was very cool. He was kind of famous in our little circle because he had been in a lot of bands and he was a lead guitar player and he was really good. And same with Roger. Roger was also kind of, you know, a important local guitarist. And of course Prairie was, you know, the best drummer in town even back when he was 18 years old. But back then, you know, you could get away. I mean, Phoenix, back in those days in the 60s, Phoenix was like an isolated market. They used to test products on us because we didn't have any influence. You know, we weren't California. We were, you know, back then 400 miles from California seemed like ages, you know, eons away. And we didn't have Eastern influence. You know, it was this little podunk town out in the middle of nowhere, and like one of the first McDonald's was there. You know, they tried out fast food.
So it was a test marketing place.
It was a test marketing place. They tried out trampoline parks, where they would take a big parking lot and cut holes in the asphalt and string a trampoline net across it. I mean, it lasted 10 minutes. You know, people would bounce up and down and bam, off onto the concrete, break their arm, break their leg, sue the company, you know. That didn't last long. Super Slide. Remember Super Slide? It was like a great big plastic slide that was like 50 feet high. And you'd get up on top of it and they'd give you a burlap bag, kind of like my cowhide here. And you'd sit on the burlap bag and you'd slide down this thing. Well, half the time the bag would slide out, you'd get a friction burn on your arm that burned all the way down to the bone, you know. And so that was a big liability thing. So that never happened. And so they used to try all these things, and so we were kind of guinea pigs, you know. Same thing with television. It was so hot there that people didn't go outside much in the summer. You stayed inside and you watched TV. You know, you watch Westerns on TV. I grew up watching Westerns.
And did you feel very much in the Wild West? Was that the thing? You felt isolated from what was going on?
Well, we didn't know. I mean, we didn't realize how isolated we were. That was all we were used to. You know, my family moved from Omaha, Nebraska, and we had horses. My dad had a horse ranch in Nebraska, and he had parade horses. He had Grand Champion parade horses with the silver saddle and the whole thing, and he would do these gated parade classes. And our horse, my dad's horse, his name was King Midas. He was grand champion of 17 states, parade grand champion, big Palomino horse, that's why he was called King Midas.
Right.
And so when
at one point you were actually thinking of being a vet, weren't you?
I was for a long time, except I just, I couldn't. I actually looked into, not too long ago, when I quit the band in '86, I looked into going to vet school.
Really?
And yeah, there's a number of good ones in California. Number one, it's very hard to get in. Number two, you have to have completed your college education. And I dropped out when I was a junior to take off to San Francisco with the band.
Right.
So by the time, and it had been so long that it turns out that I still may do it. I would have to gone back to college all over again, start from scratch. All the classes had been so long that you couldn't transfer them. So it would take me 7 years to be a vet. But I'm so, I couldn't handle it. I mean, I can't stand to see animals hurt. I freak out.
Right.
You know, I mean, one of my little dogs got killed, jumped out of the car window and got hit by a car and got killed, and I flipped out.
Right.
I mean, I was more upset than when my dad died.
Wow.
I mean, my dad and I were, had problems our whole life, and
Right.
and we finally did reconcile as I grew. He thought I was crazy to be a rock and roller, and it took a long time until about the 4th or 5th album we did before he finally said, "Oh, okay, I get it.
You're in the
you're
Hot
a
100.
singer.
You're serious about
You're
it."
serious about this." He'd come to see the show. You're a great performer. We love the band, and we kind of all reconciled again. And then he got cancer in 1991, and he died. And I was very upset. But man, when my dog got killed, I lost it completely. I mean, I was this close to ending it all. I couldn't. And if I had.
How long did this last? This feeling? Grief.
God, it was horrible. I went to grief counseling. I bought all the books, Pet Grief and all this stuff. I went to see this psychiatrist about it because I wanted to commit suicide. I felt it was my fault that I didn't have the back window in my car rolled up all the way. And my little dog Minnie saw a squirrel and jumped out after it. We were on the way to the park to walk. Fortunately, I had 2 dogs. I had sisters, Minnie and Mona. And I still had Mona. I had Mona, and in the end, they said, the counselor said, "Well, what are you going to do? Who's going to take care of Mona if you kill yourself?
Right.
What are you going to do?" And I just went, "Yeah, that's not good."
So that originally, you didn't become a vet originally because the grief and the heartache of seeing animals.
I couldn't deal with it.
Yeah,
I couldn't deal with some animal coming in, getting hit by a car, all sliced up, and I couldn't handle it. I just didn't. I couldn't turn off the emotion.
Yeah.
I'm a fucking Italian, I think the best combination is I'm half English and I'm half Italian.
Your dad's from Brighton.
My dad's from Bristol.
Bristol.
No, Brighton.
Yeah.
I'm Brighton. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're playing Bristol. My dad was from Brighton,
Right.
and his whole family was.
Yeah.
And so I love the irony and the sarcasm and the dry humor of the English.
You feel at home here.
I do. I feel at home. I mean, Monty Python was our icons for years. In fact, tonight I'm doing where's my Navy hat? That's not it. Here it is. Right? Which was a John Cleese character, from whatever, 100 years ago, from Python. And so,
You studied drama, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I was a drama major. And my mother's Italian, Sicilian. Her whole side is from Sicily.
Right.
And so I've got the passion of the Sicilian, but at the same time I have the humor and the sarcasm and the irony of the British. So it's great for me. I love it.
So when did John Waldo become Fee Waybill?
Well, in the beginning I didn't use Waybill. Before we got an album deal, I used to be Feege Cranston. I don't know why. I don't know why I picked Cranston. I don't know why. There was a senator, I think somehow someone thought I was Alan Cranston's son, and I got in free somewhere, because he was a big senator from California.
Right.
And I thought, oh, this is good. I could go around pretending to be the senator's son and get a lot of perks,
Yeah.
But then when, and Fee came from Fiji, one of the guys in the band saw a cover of a National Geographic magazine. And on the cover was the King of Fiji, for some reason. This was back in the 70s, right? And they thought I looked just like him. the king of Fiji, who's like a black guy with afro out to here, you know. I just went, what kind of, well, we were all on drugs. Yeah. So I said, what kind of drugs are, what kind of drugs weren't you on, you know? And so they started calling me Fiji.
Right.
So it was Fiji Cranston. What? And so that kind of got shortened down to Fiji, you know, how nicknames are.
Yeah.
So Rick, the bass player, still calls me Fiji.
Wow.
And so I was Fiji Cranston. And then finally, we got a deal to make a record, and it was time to put your name on the album, you know. And I thought, oh gosh, you know, my dad hates me already. If I don't put my real name on the album, I'll never be able to reconcile with him. So I dumped Cranston, and I cut Fiji. And a waybill is an invoice, right. You know, FedEx, an air waybill. It's like a list of junk in the back of your big truck. Right, you know, right. And so I took the J. It was FEEJI, which is wrong, right. And so I cut it off, and I figured, oh, this is kind of like terry cloth or right. Something, and the fee for the waybill, kind of right. It all seemed to fit somehow. So,
and so the Tubes. How about the Tubes? That name coming together. How did that come together? Actually, when we first got together. We all moved to San Francisco. First, I was a roadie. I started as Roger's roadie, right. Okay, because I was a hippie and I moved away. I moved out of Phoenix when I dropped out of college. I moved away to the northern Arizona to be a cowboy. Well, not to be a cowboy, but I moved away to be a hippie, and we lived in this commune?
Kind of a commune. It was an abandoned mining town called Jerome. It was a ghost town. And the whole town was full of these little cardboard shacks, wood shacks.
Last picture show scene.
Right, that were the miners, and it was up on the side of a mountain called Mingus Mountain up right. In northern Arizona. And we all lived in about 25 of us just left Phoenix, left everything behind, and we moved to Jerome. And we had nothing, we had no money. We would have to go around to collect money to buy a 25-pound bag of brown rice from the store down in Cottonwood. Right. And we all lived on brown rice for years, you know. Not years, months. I couldn't handle it very long. I still remember, for like a week, I had 8 cents in my pocket, and that was it. I'll never forget it. I was walking around going, man, I got 8 cents. This is a joke. This is ridiculous, you know. I'm going nowhere. And I finally couldn't handle it anymore, and I went to work for a cowboy, a local cowboy, because I grew up on a horse. I mean, you know, when I first moved to Scottsdale, we brought a lot of horses with us from Nebraska, and when I was a kid, I used to ride around town on my horse instead of a bicycle, and they still had hitching posts right. In the late 50s in Scottsdale. You could go to the movies on Saturday morning and see a Western and leave your horse tied up to the hitching post outside. And so, you know, up until the time that rock and roll and girls became more important to me around 13 or 14. I mean, you know, when I was 14, the Beatles hit. Right. I mean, that changed my life. I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be in rock and roll. You know, the Beatles changed it all for me. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of said, okay, well, I'm done with horses now. You know, I want to be a rock singer. And in my first year of high school, you know, I was trying to be in a band. I was taking singing classes and wanted to be in a band. You know.
What was the first Beatles single that really hit you?
I don't know, I Want to Hold Your Hand, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I mean, I flipped out when the Beatles happened. I flipped out. I loved them. I sang all day long, singing Beatles songs. And I was really into music. I mean, I had all these my first single was Fats Domino, Blueberry Hill, which I still have. And so I had a lot of music, and I loved to sing. And my mother was a singer. My mother used to sing in big bands back when she lived in Omaha before she got married to my dad. Big bands like, you know, Tex Beneke or Duke Ellington or big traveling bands. Right. They would travel around without a singer. And in each town, they would pick up a local singer, and it was all standards. You know, you just say, well, do you know, whatever, Begin the Begin or whatever, some standard tune. Yeah. And my mom was a great singer. She used to do that. That's where I got my voice, was from my mom.
And when do you remember getting the vision for the Tubes, this theatrical
show? I was a drama major,
and I had done all these plays in high school. I did Little Abner when I was this big around. I was a little skinny kid with no arms, no nothing, and the guy cast me as Little Abner in the play, right? And I kept waiting for them to make a big bulky muscle suit for me to wear, so I'd look like Little Abner, And oh no, and the director went, oh no, we're not making you any suit. You just have to think strong, When Pappy Yoakum jumps off the roof into your arms, you better be thinking really strong because you can't drop it, And so I had always been into theater, and they asked, Roger and Prairie asked me to move to San Francisco with them. Prairie got a scholarship to the San Francisco Art Institute, and they decided in 1969 to move to San Francisco. And I was living up in the desert, up in the mountains, and they used to drive up, Roger and Prairie and their bass player, they used to drive up to Cottonwood, set their stuff up with a generator in the middle of nowhere, and just play to the desert. Just nobody, just me and a couple of other guys that lived up there, hippies, and they just play out in the middle of just to the world in the desert. I thought it was so great. And
that's how the idea started coming together?
Well, they asked me to come with them. They said, well, we're moving to San Francisco. And one of the guys in the band said, actually, they didn't say come and be our roadie and hump our stuff, hump our shit and make food for us and be the truck driver. No, they said, we want you to play logs. They wanted to get into an African thing, and they wanted me to play logs, like hollow African logs with a slot in them. And I said, well, I'm not a drummer. Oh yeah. Well, we want you to. I never saw a log. Logs never showed up, ever. And I just ended up. I said, okay, well, I wanted out. I had been working for this cowboy. I was a vegetarian.
Did you not like the Bay Area and the whole San Francisco scene once you got there?
Oh, I loved it. But I mean, I wanted out of Cottonwood. I was cutting off balls from cows, and I'm a vegetarian, and I'm cutting balls off, and the cow and the ranchers eats them. Mountain oysters, we call them. He fries them up and eats them. Here, come on, go ahead, taste one. I'm like, no. Go ahead, taste. No, I'm a vegetarian.
I want to be a vet.
And so they said, we're leaving. We're moving to San Francisco. Prairie's going to school. We don't want to break up the band. We're following him. You want to come along? I said, okay. So I moved to San Francisco with them, and I humped this gear, and I drove the truck, and I made Cheese Lake, which was my specialty when I was a cook, Cheese Lake, which is like a big old tortilla with cheese all over it. Basically, it was a tortilla and cheese, and that's it.
When did they start listening to your theatrical input ideas?
Well, yeah, when the Tubes were originally two separate bands, Bill's band and Roger's band, that merged together, and when we merged together, because we were both starving, neither one of us could support ourselves. And so the managers, which were some other guys that went to high school with us, not professionals, they went, well, we've got some gigs, you've got some, let's do them all together. We'll have twice as many gigs, So we combined the two bands.
Right.
And when we did that, Bill's band already had 5 roadies. They had all these guys living at their house being roadies.
Right.
And I said, well, what am I going to do? They went, well, we don't need any roadies. And they said, well, how about being a singer? You want to? And I said, well, I can sing. I've been singing all the way through high school and college. I can sing. And so they made me the background singer. Right. And they said, oh, but you got to wear something wacky. You can't just stand there and sing. You got to wear something dumb, some stupid outfit. We started. Roger and Prairie and I came out as the radar men from Uranus, and we wore Mylar spacesuits. And that was like Bill would play, because they didn't know enough songs to play a whole show together. So Bill would play some songs, and then he'd go, I'd like to introduce the Radar Men from Uranus. And the Radar Men would come out, and Prairie would play. We had 2 drummers, and Roger with 2 guitar players, and I would stand in the back and be the background singer. Well, I sang so loud that finally they said, look, this is ridiculous. He can't sing so loud. And I'm playing all these maracas and various kinds of, percussion instruments. And they said, you sing too loud. Why don't you come sing lead vocal? I said, oh, okay. Well, what? And so they didn't really, in the beginning, they didn't want me to sing. They were kind of protective. They didn't want me to sing their original material, Roger's tunes or Bill's tunes. And they said, oh, we'll do you know, we'll do a medley. We did some cover songs. Well, you can come up, we'll do a medley of James Brown songs, and you can be a Mexican disco singer called Jesus Bongo. That was my first character, Jesus Bongo.
Right.
Who were actually, oh, where's my hat? That reminds me, I'm missing my mariachi hat. Someone,
so they would think of all these characters like Doctor Strange case. Was that their idea as well?
No, well, we all came up with stuff. We all
Right.
sat down together, and I mean, once I started doing characters and outfits, I did the cowboy. I did Cowboy Fee from the very beginning. We used to do El Paso.
Right.
And then I did Jesus Bongo, and we did all these characters, and it became kids loved it. You know, the band would play their original songs, and the people would just stand there. And then I would come up and I'd do the James Brown medley in El Paso and all these outfits, and they go, yeah, this is great, the guy's great.
Yeah.
And so we started getting more and more into it,
Right.
you know, and getting more and more into, you know, doing the visuals and building the show up. And I mean, we got signed to a record deal on the strength of a video.
Right.
We didn't send audio tape cassettes out like everybody else.
Yeah.
We sent a video to all the record companies of us doing the show with, you know, me being Quaalude back then with little dinky shoes, little dinky platforms, not my giant platforms that I made from the Bondage catalog. And so I just kept doing more and more and more, and we kept, and then we finally, you know, we saw these, we saw this comedy troupe of strippers called Leela and the Snakes. And there was these 4 girls, and they would do this kind of comedy bit, and on the side they were strippers on Broadway,
So
you know, in San Francisco. So we hired them to be in the band.
A quick sort of review over the 20 years that were like the A&M years and the Capitol years. Which were your favourite? Which were your favourite, Fee?
Well, personally, I think the best producer we ever worked with was David Foster.
Right.
And in the beginning, we were a wacky cult band, you know, and everything, oh, they're cool, they're a cult band. Well, cult kind of translates as not very popular,
Right.
not selling any records, not a hit, you know. And
No money.
Yeah, no money. And I think originally they signed us to A&M because Jerry Moss, the M, it was Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss back then. Well, Jerry thought we were cool. We were like the cool, he signed us because it was cool. Everybody, you know, everybody else had passed on the Tubes. And he signed us because he thought we were cool. And after 5 albums that didn't sell very well, the coolness kind of wore off, you know.
Right.
We used a different producer every time. I mean, we made a couple of great albums at A&M. The first album with Al Cooper was great.
Yeah.
And the Young and Rich album with
Todd Rundgren.
no, Young and Rich was Scott, the guy that did the Beatles. God, I can't remember his name. Cut this part out. Shit, I can't remember his name. Anyway, it was the second album was pretty good, and then the third album was a disaster.
Right.
Fourth album was a live album, and that was pretty good, a live double album from London.
Yeah.
You know, our manager, Ricky Farr, made us come to England. He goes, oh, you guys got to do this theatrical thing in England. They're going to love this.
Yeah.
And so we came and we played Hammersmith Odeon for 8 nights in a row.
Right.
And we did the What Do You Want From live album here. And but it didn't do all that well. Pete
And
Henderson
your favourite
produced that.
album from the Capitol years?
My favorite album is Completion Backward Principle, which was the first album on Capitol, the first album we did with David Foster. After all that, after 5 albums on A&M, they said, well, yeah, you're cute and you're kind of our pet cool band, but after we were, you know, about $2 million in the red from never selling records and keep taking tour support to support the big massive show, you know, they finally went, okay, that's enough. We're tired of being cool.
Right.
You know, you're out of here.
Right.
And we had to kind of change our plan because Capitol, the A&R guy at Capitol Records, Bobby Columbi, you know, he goes, look, you know, you've had 5 records, you haven't sold any records. I mean, that you're really cool and everybody thinks you're cool, but we're not going to sign you to sell no records.
Yeah.
You got to, you know, if you want to be on Capitol, if you want to continue your career,
Yeah.
Ken Scott
Right.
did our second album, Englishman. Ken Scott, worked with the Beatles and George Martin.
All right.
He says, you got to have some hits. You
Yeah.
got to get on the radio.
Yeah.
You got to get a producer who can change these wacky psycho tunes into something
Were you
that
happy about that?
people understand. Well, I was, because, you know, I was brought up on the Beatles. You know, I loved all those songs. I
Commercial,
loved all
yeah.
those songs that resolved in the end, and
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
great vocals, and you know, and some of the other guys, you know, they wanted to be weird and play songs in keys that nobody
Yeah.
else played in,
And I gathered
times that nobody else played in.
That was the reason you split in the end, wasn't it? Because there was the commercial part of the Tubes, and there was the
Well, yeah. Well, that was a you know, that was a big point of contention for us, because, you know, some of the guys didn't like Foster and, you know, thought that, you know, oh, we don't want to be a hit.
yeah.
Well, I said, what are you talking about? You know, we've been in this business for 10 years. You don't want to ever make some money or ever, you know, I wanted to continue in the business. Nobody wanted to sign us.
Yeah.
So I love David Foster, and we made 2 great albums with David Foster, and we had 2 big hits, 3 big hits actually with David Foster, and then when it got to making the next album, you know, a couple of the guys led the charge. You know, I don't want to name names, but they're not in the band anymore.
Right. Right.
You won't be seeing them tonight, but. You know, they didn't want to use David. They went saying, you know, no, we don't need him. You know, we want to do our own thing and be weird and, you know, blah blah blah, and do our own produce ourselves. And Todd Rundgren agreed to kind of let us co-produce, you know, and that's why they went for it. And I flipped out. I just said, man, we've just had 2 hit records, and now you want to just toss it off, you know, because Foster is, you know, too much of a perfectionist.
Right.
I mean, he was incredible. You had to be perfect. I mean, nothing's perfect, but you really had to be close. You
Fee,
really
I'm
had to
afraid
try.
people are staring daggers at me. I'm keeping you from the sound check, which is the thing about
know.
tonight. I could talk to you for a long,
I
long
know,
time.
and
It's
I
such
could
a
talk
pity.
forever too.
It's such a pity, but it's been a pleasure meeting you, and
Well, thank
great
you.
show tonight.
We're thrilled to be still here playing, and I mean, it was okay with me, you know, to go to reach more people and become more mass accepted, because the reason I'm here, I figured out, it's hard to figure out why you're here on the planet. A lot of people never figure it out, but I had a epiphany and realized that I'm here to create that joy in the people's faces that watch the Tubes. That's why I'm here. And I want to keep on doing it. I can't explain to you the feeling that I get when we're up there playing and those people are just going, oh man, you guys are just so weird, you know. This is so really great and weird, you know. And that's what does it for me. That's why I'm still here performing, you know. I mean, I'd just as soon be home playing polo. You know, I love to play polo, and I have a couple of horses, and I mean, you know, if I could support my polo habit without doing this, you know, but I can't get away from that feeling, that joy that comes to me, and to know that I can do that for them. I can change their life. I can make them happy. I can wash away their cares for 2 hours. And when I see that coming back to me on the stage, there is no better feeling in the entire world. So, you know, that's why I'm here.
Fee, have a great show.
Thank
Have
you,
a
I
great
will.
show. And
I
thank you for your
appreciate it.
time.
I had another epiphany that I was gonna, you know, someday when I'm really old, in the middle of White Punks on Dope, I'm gonna have a heart attack and drop dead right on the stage. Which I think would be a great way to go, because I don't want to be old and infirm and, you know.
But not tonight.
But not tonight, no. I don't figure tonight will be the night. I took a little bit of ginseng, so I figure my heart will probably last me another couple
It's been
of
a
days.
pleasure meeting you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Cheers.
it. Thank you very much. It's been great. And looking forward to it. Okay?